Happy, where are machinima reviews?
After a very long hiatus, yes, I am doing these again. The reasons why I dropped doing reviewing, and particularly this one, is that A, the reviews I was writing at the time were very inflammatory and negative towards the creator, which caused me to reevaluate why I was doing these reviews in the first place, and sort of shifting the direction I wanted to take these in. B, for my return review, I wanted to do something different where I tackled 6 different types of work, but bring in 2 different types of reviewers. C, I haven't been watching that many machinimas and only stuff that comes from higher people because lately there's just been a bunch of good stuff on TV and video games that I've just been preoccupying my time with, and I've been busy so I can't really get into a really analytical mind state. And D, one of the reviewers I had on the project kinda didn't do their stuff, so I had to switch them out with someone who was more willing to do it on time. I'm just gonna leave it at that. I don't want any drama coming out of this. Which leads on to this rather different approach to doing machinima reviews. Today, we'll be reviewing 6 different machinimas from the Hub 2017 Spring Contest. Quick rundown if you don't know what the Hub is, it was a Discord server that started out in 2016 and was meant to bring resources, people together, and give feedback to new and inspiring directors. The reason why I want to take a look at these machinimas is that they're a microcosm of this short period of time where everyone was trying to learn these different techniques and trying to propel themselves in making unique and beautiful visuals with a cinematic edge to them. They're similar in their cinematic depiction of cyberpunk or sci-fi-esque machinimas, but they also differ in what techniques they use and what directions they take their concepts in. That's also why I'm not being the sole reviewer, in which I brought 2 different directors to help reviewing these 6 machinimas, because this particular set of machinimas are very similar yet very different, and I wanted to bring a different perspective to picking out these differences and similarities. Joining me today is the esteemed director, StarFall Studios, known for his unique writing in Shift 2 and Seraph, along with Frank Rosati of Black Rose Machinima, who was able to faithfully recapture and improve upon the classic machinima, The Heretic, of the Codex series. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Tribulation is about a lone, disgraced soldier who takes it upon himself to take vengeance upon a corrupt government official. And right off the bat, the visuals are really, really good. They have a cool aesthetic with an emphasis on blue hues. This really fits with the somber tone of the machinima, and the visual direction is really well done. The machinima has a cinematic edge to it, with its use of not only composite layering, but also using in-game forged cameras to simulate depth of field and lens dirt. The camera work is really well done. There's a variety of moving and static shots with differing angles and zooms. Some of this is achieved yet again with the forged cameras, which allow you to get different angles but also varying differing amounts of speeds. There also seems to be a lot of thought put into how the subject should look, as each shot not only has some fantastic lighting, but different uses of shadows. There's also a subtle camera wiggle that isn't too in your face, and it changes intensity from shot to shot. The voice acting is really good, and the voice actors really fit their role. It's hard for me to explain, but they just sound like they're actual people talking rather than people acting characters.
Yeah? What makes you say that?
A squad full of men died overseas. No one shows up until hours after the bloodshed. Those men were left to die.
The audio design has a good array of fitting sound effects, and some reverb and radio effects for immersion within the setting.
From what we could gather, the former Secretary of Defense was shot with one bullet, believed to be fired from a sniper rifle.
The music selection is good, fits with the tone of the machinima, and the use of Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody feels oddly fitting. At the time of this machinima's release, these were some very unique forge sets, and they look very authentic. Bear in mind, most directors when using Halo 5's Forge tend to make standard military bases and not really utilizing Forge to make different settings than what was already present in the base game. So, having a contemporary bar with plenty of background details is a huge step up from making again another UNSC base made with solid blocks. But now, on to the negatives. Unless you're paying absolute attention, it's hard to grasp what's going on in the story. This is due to how much exposition through talking there is, rather than natural dialogue or showing the events unfold. A lot of what is happening, as well as contextual events leading to the short, is told to the audience.
August 17th, 2556. 4 UNSC soldiers KIA. 1 survivor.
It's supposed to build up to the eventual climax, but it doesn't make me feel anything, or connect to the characters' motivations. That's another thing. I don't really care much for these characters. I don't really know much about the protagonist other than that he's a soldier trying to get revenge against a senator, but as far as his personality goes, I can't tell so much about him. It's worse for the other characters, especially the main antagonist, as we're told all the bad things he's done, but not really seeing him in that context. He doesn't even have any speaking lines for someone who's supposed to be the main driving force for the main character.
August 29th, 2556. Secretary of Defense brought into court on suspicion of involvement with insurrectionist forces that assaulted the convoy a team of UNSC soldiers were transporting. May 21st, 2557. Secretary of Defense found not guilty.
There are also a few mistakes near the end with camera continuity. I got confused as to the direction of these two characters near the end, and due to them being framed on the same side of the screen, there isn't a good indication of location for these two characters, which often, as I've heard, people were confused with who is who and where they are. Overall, Tribulation is a visually striking and example of having both high production and cinematic edge. But its visuals can't keep up with a story that explains itself too much without showing it to us. It feels like the climax didn't have a good build-up and the ending just came too quickly.
Oh shit, I'm sorry. Sorry for what?
Haze 2.0 is the second iteration of Grumpy Elite's Haze series. While each is technically a reboot of the last, he attempts to utilize newer editing methods he's learned, as well as adding a unique flair or twist to the improved version. In Haze 2.0, the story revolves around a seemingly top-secret security facility where the individuals overseeing it are guarding important, though ambiguous, items of importance. Blueprints, documents, theoretical technologies, etc. During the Machinima, an assassin-like character infiltrates the facility to steal the aforementioned info and kills everyone in the process. The cinematography is probably the highest point for this film. Camera movement is precise and tight, the subject is almost always properly framed, but unfortunately Haze seems to fall short in just about every other category. Between the visual glitches like piss-poor frame rate and ghosting interpolation between shots as objects and people move, it can be more than a little difficult to stomach watching the whole thing without trying to skim through. The voice acting is average at best, while the dialogue between the two main characters isn't just odd, it can straight up be interpreted as subtle homosexual flirtation whilst talking about sandwiches. I know that sounds weird, but context is key and you likely won't know what I'm referring to unless you give it a watch yourself.
How's the generators?
Jesus, you scared me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Scaredy Cat. Would you like me to play some smooth elevator music for your delicate little ears?
Oh, ha ha ha. Very funny. I'll have you know this sly cat just fixed your power problem. Maybe you'll be so kind as to buy me lunch today.
Yeah, I'll think about it. Come on up, buddy.
The story is far from original, but it's not done poorly, per se. It's just that it doesn't seem to add anything new to the mix, and watching it without getting bored is already hard enough to do with the discrepancies in visual quality. I'd give Haze 2.0 a 5 out of 10 for being, ultimately, a middle-of-the-road project with no particularly redeeming factors aside from the cinematography. For Haze 3.0, I fully expect visual fidelity alongside direct and prominent homosexuality. Seriously, I don't just want them talking about owing each other PBJs, I want them to find some use for that peanut butter with other kinds of BJs. But, for real, please do better next time.
Angelus by Genesis Films was a story of a soldier ordered to protect high-grade military equipment, but it is ultimately lost in the end. Whereas the vocal performances are well done, it seems to fall flat with the choice to use separate helmet voice effects for science officers and soldiers.
You'll have to excuse me. This seems to be a very secretive matter for command. I'm just the inspector.
An inspector with a 1024 military-grade sniper rifle.
An inspector nonetheless.
The science officer is given a modern-day Halo Spartan effect, whereas the soldiers sound like stormtroopers from Star Wars A New Hope. It's a little distracting, but easy to forgive. The animated bits are done very well. Considering it was using Source Filmic for the animations, it didn't have a lot of issues Source animations have with these unrealistically fluid movements, and manages to stay very realistic with how each body moves on screen. The story is told more visually, which is a nice choice. Not a lot of machinima actually do this, and they tend to try and have characters tell us more than the director wants to show us, so kudos to Jerry. All in all, this is one I'd actually recommend to a first-time machinima viewer.
Like Mario and Princess Peach.
Watch Dogs is about a man who uncovers a robot, and they both fall in love. Presentation of Watch Dog is clean and crisp. The machinima doesn't have an abundance of visual effects, but it does what it needs to by cleaning up the contrast and color grading to match the short's mood. StarFall tends to go for a more cool and clean style, and here I think it works most of the time. The forge sets are nice and have good lighting. Most machinima sets either look bland, too dark, or use far too many lights. The sets here have some detailed backdrops that provide context to the setting. It uses different forge effects, such as dust, there's some good balanced lighting, and a lot of various objects floating through the environment. What I mean by good lighting is due to the short not being too dark or too exposed, and actually having a good use of shadows being casted on the main subject, which for some reason is a rarity among Halo 5 machinimas. It also uses some lights to cast volumetric color lighting through the fog, along with contrasting light elements. These are used in different points of the short and makes each set change feel unique, while not making it feel too drastic of a change. The voice acting is really good, especially with the main character. Jerry Freeman lends his voice and proves to not only give a good deadpan impression without sounding like he's line reading, but can transition smoothly into different emotions.
Well, obviously I can't strip you down for parts, so I'll be leaving. Have fun with life. Damn it, just go away! I don't need dead weight. Look out for myself and that's it. No one else.
This combined with the natural sounding dialogue makes it stand out from most machinimas that either use too quirky or very to the point dialogue. It helps us connect to the main character when they sound natural in both their voice and writing. Most of the audio design is good with no out of place sound effect. What's most notable is the ambient design, with a new soundscape for each scene change.
Would you just leave me alone already?
The short has good cinematography, with no breakage in the 180 rule, and keeps good composition. It has a variety of shots with differing speed, direction, and angling, so it doesn't feel like you're just watching the same type of shot being repeated. With that being said, there are a few flaws that I was able to pick out. The pacing takes a hit for just how much downtime there is and a lot of shots focused on just the main character walking. I understand building atmosphere and doing environmental storytelling, but when your machinima consists of 50% walking, you might want to either cut that down or include some indirect storytelling within these sections. The antagonists are really glossed over and aren't more than just generic bad guys. They kind of feel out of place with their dialogue, and it doesn't help that the voice acting throws them off by being brothers, but one's an American and the other's British? I don't know.
Well, what do we have here? Huh? What the bloody hell is that?
The story is rather simple and hinges on the relationship between the mech and the MC. There isn't really any big narrative as it focuses on a small story. With that said, besides the middle and ending section, it's not that interesting, and the machinima's length takes a detriment to how much little time we can connect to these two characters. As I said before, the audio design is good for the most part, but the sound effects for the mech are really loud and in your face. I think the dog sounds are cute, but they get annoying when you reuse them several times throughout the short. Often, I had to adjust my volume whenever the mech was in scene. I think if you just cut down the effects by like 25-30% volume, it would have been perfect.
Damn it, must have triggered something. completely dead like the others.
The climax scene wasn't very climactic and did raise a few eyebrows of me. For one, its action wasn't that interesting to watch, and the sequence of events seemed to go pretty fast. Then there's the fact that the protagonist survives a point-blank shot to the face and just walks it off. Keep it in mind, besides the sci-fi elements, the machinima is going for a down-to-earth feel, and this lapse in logic sort of breaks my disbelief. With that said, Watch Dogs is a fairly enjoyable short with a good main character and has some good moments, but some also questionable ones. I would have enjoyed the mech more if its sounds were lowered a bit, but overall, I had a good time with it.
Contemplation on the surface seems to be the story about a jumper deciding he's had enough, when a seemingly friendly stranger steps in to convince him otherwise. The voice acting is very solid between the two characters, and the layering of the shots work very nice as well.
I'm from the office below. I work as a... Never mind, I think I've seen you before. What's your name? What are you doing up here?
Isn't it obvious? Oh, up here. It's not going through anymore.
It does fall victim to some common jumper tropes with an unexpected, however, in my opinion, unnecessary twist. It seems our friendly onlooker was actually a hitman, and I have to say it makes the entire thing kind of pointless. If he's sent to kill the guy on the ledge, why not just shoot him before he jumps, or just let him jump? It just didn't make sense to me. If he's sent there to kill the guy on the ledge, why not just either shoot him before he jumps, or just let him jump? It just didn't make sense to me. The jumper also talks about the things he's seen and the things he's done, but we don't know anything about the character at all. So it's really hard to connect with. We don't know what he's seen or done, and because of the ending, we'll never know. This machinima felt more like a way for the director to learn certain editing tricks and less like a fully fleshed out idea.
It's almost always easier to talk about negative aspects than positive for me, so this should be a rather short review. Suffer With Me by High Tide Films is exactly what you want in a machinima. High-quality visuals with great narrative pacing. It centers around a contained area in a city where stationed soldiers of an unnamed faction appear to be enforcing some kind of martial law. An unknown message is sent out to only a fraction of the militants, instructing them to kill any civilians in the area, as well as other militants who did not receive the message. The main character, Dakota, is one such individual. After being shot by his partner and administering first aid to himself, he makes his last act to be helping save a woman stuck in the city as he escorts her on borrowed time, presumably all while bleeding out. The cause for all the soldiers' sudden murderous orders is never explained, but it doesn't really need to be. The ambiguity brings a certain charm to the project. It's direct and to the point. It doesn't waste time with unnecessary world building, but also ensures that you have enough information to jump into the world High Tide's created without getting lost. Months ago, I asked Mike whether he'd consider expanding a bit of the lore with the prequel, as well as provide my own theories as to why everything happened the way it did. While he did appear to like the reasons and lore that I suggested, and agreed that it was very possible to see a prequel in the works in the near future, it's been nearly a year since Suffer With Me's release, and unfortunately that may be unlikelier as time goes on. Mike uses the layering technique exceptionally well throughout Suffer's entirety, where it looks much nicer than a default shot, but not as obvious or obnoxious as many other directors seem to utilize it, adding too much blur, having the wrong lighting, etc. The superb performance by A-Star and Ali Fleur's voice acting immerses you in their struggles to survive wholeheartedly. A-Star, surprisingly, shares a VA role with Haze. Maybe he simply phoned it in for the previous project, but he certainly pulled out all stops with Suffer.
Why risk your life for someone you've never met?
Because my life should have ended about 10 minutes ago. With the time I have left, I want to do something good for once in my life.
What's your name?
Dakota. Yours?
Mika.
My only real complaint with the film is rather the same reason I bashed Haze's story. While High Tide certainly made his take far more intriguing, it's simply another template that's been done before where a police or enforcer group betrays the very people they're supposed to be protecting, their associates, or both. We've seen this everywhere, from real-life examples like the German Nazis and British Redcoats, to fictional events like Order 66 from Star Wars and the executions of PFC Joseph Allen, Ghost, and Roach from Modern Warfare 2. Even in Machinima, this idea has been overused to the point of achieving almost meme-like status, where the most common culprit behind the treachery is the Office of Naval Intelligence. At the end of the day, however, I absolutely believe that, despite its unoriginal storyline, Suffer With Me is still capable of rising above the others within its genre, as well as others outside of it. It gets an 8 out of 10 from me.
If you enjoyed these reviews and want to check out these machinimas, there will be a dedicated playlist down in the description for all 6 of these machinimas you can check out, along with links to the 2 other directors, StarFall and Black Rose Machinima, who both volunteered their insight into today's reviews. If you've made a machinima that you want feedback on, then I'll review it. If you've made a machinima that you want to have an open discussion about and for other people to learn from, then I will review that as well. It doesn't matter if it's bad or if it's good, I'll add it to the review queue and I'll give it my complete and utmost analytical attention. These reviews are being tailored for you and your benefit. And with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Fuck you, wait!